What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Member Perspective Podcast Show. I'm your host, Colter, and we're going to cover a topic today that means a lot to me. It's one that has really allowed me to find consistent success in what I do in a sales position. Now, if we think about sales, I think we have a bad rap for sales, and it's almost like we've all been taught to sell in one way. And that way is to get really, really good at objections, get really, really good at overcoming those objections and going back to the close. Overcoming the objection, closing the customer. Overcoming the objection, closing the customer. And steamrolling it, like we're not going to take no for an answer. And even if that means we're staying on the phone with our customer for an hour, or they're sitting at our desk for more than an hour, we're not going to take no for an answer. Okay. I think that's when people think about sales, I think that approach is what a lot of the times brings the bad rap. And disclaimer, I'm not saying anything bad about that approach, right? I think there are certain things within that approach that I think work really, really well. However, what I am saying is that approach doesn't always fit everybody. That approach is not my style. I don't really enjoy that sales pressure. I don't like to feel like I'm pushing a product on someone. If I don't feel like it's a good fit, or if the customer's telling me it's a good fit, I don't feel like I really want to steamroll them until they tell me yes, if that makes sense. And again, that approach is great. I think you can learn a lot by taking that approach. However, more of my approach is more of a psychological approach. Because I don't like that awkward sales pressure, I want to position myself in a way where I can educate, right? And I can educate in an extremely effective way. More into the psychological selling, I want to give people options. I want it to be in their court. I want them to be able to think about, these different risks and make a decision for themselves, but do it in a strategic way where I present it in a way where they really actually understand why it's important. I want to help them understand why it's important and really paint that picture for them, ultimately give them an option, right? And if they choose no, great, we can move on. There's some objections that we can overcome, and it's not that I pitch someone, if they don't want to do it initially, I completely stop. No, there's strategy with overcoming objections, but I also think, we focus a lot on overcoming objections, a lot on overcoming objections, but not enough on preventing them from happening in the first place, right? So again, a piece of my approach is preventing objections from happening in the first place. But ultimately, I want to help customers experience what their life would be like if they, one, did have the proper coverage in place, or two, did not. Okay, I want to help them experience that so they can actually understand why what we do is so important and why we're recommending them get that coverage. Okay, so the psychological approach for me fits my mold better. Now, each of us are different, right? And that's the challenge of doing this is everybody is so different. They're so unique to them. However, you don't have to align directly with more of a steamrolling objection approach and a really hard sales approach. You don't have to just align with that or just align with psychological selling. You can make a mixture of both and make it your own. You've got to understand yourself and know what your style is so you can make adjustments and continue to get better and get to that next level. I want to go through 10 different principles and 10 different ways that I think through psychological selling. And all of these things have really given me an edge in the sales space, specifically selling insurance. So the first thing that I like to think of when I think psychological selling is the simple idea of put myself in my customer's shoes. I know you've heard that thrown around. I know you've been taught you need to understand your customer, okay? This is what we're talking about. However, for the longest time as a team member and just trying to understand what I needed to do, I was frustrated because I didn't understand how to actually do that. So the way that I do that, the way that I put myself in my customer's shoes is number one, I think like they think. And number two, I feel what they feel. A couple examples, and this is going to demonstrate how this is going to give you an edge in your conversations with your customers. Let's just pretend that you go to the car dealership today and you decide to purchase a new 2023 Volkswagen Tiguan, and you decide to finance it, right? You get a loan. So let's kind of think about what your day looks like at that dealership. Well, you've probably been test driving a few cars. You found this one that you really like. You've gone back and forth with your spouse, or with yourself about if it's a good decision, if you guys should do it, if you should buy it or not. It's a pretty day full of a lot of stress, a lot of emotions, I should say. You get excited about the car. You're trying to think if you can fit it within the budget, if it's a good idea, if it's not, right? And so that's what our customers are going through when they generally purchase a new car, especially if they get a loan. After going and test driving the vehicle, now it's time to talk about the numbers, right? So you go over to the finance person's office, you sit down, here comes the paperwork, and if you're like me, you can't help but feel a little bit of stress because, it's like, oh my gosh, that is the loan that I'm going to take out. Okay. I know I probably shouldn't be doing that, but I'm going to do it, I guess. Here's my monthly payment. There's an element of stress that comes along with that monthly payment. Another example of this is a parent calls in to add their youthful driver to their policies. Their daughter just turned 16 and got her license. How does the parent feel? What are some of the things that they're thinking when they're calling in to add their driver? Well, I don't have a kid that's 16 yet, but I can only imagine they are probably very stressed about their young driver being on the road. They're worried for them, and they're probably thinking, man, this is going to be expensive. To add them to my policies, this is going to be expensive. When a parent calls in to add their driver, wouldn't you want to know those things? Wouldn't you want to know that that's what they're thinking, that that's how they're feeling, right? I know I would. Or let's think about our retired customers, right? People that are, done working. They maybe don't have any debt anymore, and they're just enjoying life, right? Well, what types of things are those types of people thinking? How are they feeling? Different areas in our lives, we're going to be thinking and feeling different things. And so maybe for those retired customers, they really want to give back to their family. Like that gives them a lot of fulfillment in their life. And they also don't want to be a burden for their family. If we can go in from that angle with our older customers and help them, either avoid the burden of leaving behind debt for their family to deal with, or maybe in the approach of, hey, we've got a few ways that you can give back to your kids, that you can build a life savings plan for your grandkid. There's different approaches that we can attack this at. Don't come unless we truly understand what our customers are thinking and feeling at different parts of their lives. Another example, let's say that a customer calls your office and they're at a car dealership and they need an evidence of insurance. They need their insurance card so they can leave the dealership. How is that customer thinking? What are they feeling? Well, again, going back to the dealership, it's a long process. They've probably then been there for a few hours. They're probably getting a little impatient. They want to get the heck out of there. So understanding that, guys, helps us know that maybe we shouldn't waste a lot of time and energy to pitch the customer right then and there on the phone about covering a loan with a life policy. Maybe we should just tell them, hey, I'll get you your cards. I'll call you back later and we can go over coverage and price, right? Because the timing just doesn't make the most sense. It's not going to be as effective as it could be if we just called them back at a better time for them. Again, understanding what our customers are thinking and feeling will give you an edge in what you do. It's not about you. It's about your customers. The sooner that you can get to understand that, the more effective you will be in your conversations. Think of what's in it for me. WIIFM. It's an acronym I try to live by. Not personally for me, but for my customers. What's in it for my customers? Every part of our approach, I think if we can keep that, think of what's in it for me, you're going to be more effective in your conversations. You're going to sell more policies. And that's simply by just understanding your customers. But a lot of team members skimp out on this. You need to study your customers. You need to understand them almost better than they understand themselves. That way you can help guide them down this buying process and get them what they need in place, to protect them. Okay, so the second thing that I like to think of is what's in it for me. It's not about you, it's about the customer. The third thing, so they don't want your pitch and your customers like to buy, but they don't like to be sold. Let's put this example out there. Let's say that you need a new pair of jeans and you've been working really hard this week and you get to Friday and you're like, I deserve a new pair of jeans. I'm going to go buy some. Okay, so you get in your car and you go to the mall, and you get into the mall and you're going to Buckle. Okay, not saying that you like Buckle, but for this example, let's say that you like Buckle. So you go into the mall and you've got in your mind, I need a new pair of jeans. It's not that you don't know why you're going there or that you're going to browse the mall. No, you need a new pair of jeans and you're going to Buckle. So you get there, and the moment that you cross into the store of Buckle, that retail person is on you. They say, hey, how's it going? How can I help you today? And mind you, you know why you're going to Buckle. It's not that you don't know, but even knowing why you're going there, that you need a new pair of jeans, when that retail person says, hey, how's it going? How can I help you today? Why are you telling them that you're just looking, that you're just browsing? Why do we do that? Found myself doing that the other day, and I was like, holy cow, like that was almost just habit. I want you to ask yourself, why do I do that? It's simply because we don't want to engage with salespeople. Naturally, we just don't. We like to buy, but we don't like to be sold. You feel like that going into buy a pair of jeans. I think innately our customers are going to feel like that towards us if we're positioning ourselves in a way where we're just selling them, and it's very evident that we are. I'm not saying that we need to hide behind ourselves. I'm just saying we need to get more into a needs conversation, help them understand their current needs rather than just offering people products with no rhyme or reason. Our customers like to buy, but they don't like to be sold to. So how can you position yourself in a way where you don't come off as a salesperson, but you come off as an educator? Number 5, what we say is important. The words we use are important. I've realized this over my 6 years of being a team member. The words we use are extremely important. For example, early on in selling insurance, I would just say, hey, Mr. Customer, tell me about your life insurance. At times, guys, before I could finish my sentence, my customer's already given me an objection. Oh, Colter, I've got that through work. I started to see trends. I started to have conversation with customers, and a lot of them, at least pivoting to life insurance. Hey, tell me about your life insurance. Every time they hear life insurance, they immediately make a decision in their mind, which is the objection we generally hear. And that's where I was getting stuck. I was never able to actually get into a sales conversation and help the customer understand, here's the problem you face, here's the solution, here are the benefits. I could never help them see why life insurance is important for them because I was getting them stuck on life insurance, right? On that word, right? I could never get to what it does for them because they were stuck on what it is. So I realized, oh my gosh, customers have these beliefs that, whether they're true or not, they have them about life insurance that prevent me from even getting into a good conversation with them. Life insurance, I started to use different words instead of that. Loan payoff protection, mortgage payoff protection, right? We've heard a lot of those, but the words we use matter. Another example, maybe you're going to quote an added plup to someone's policy, and you use the word, okay, Mr. Customer, this is going to be $30 more. How does that feel? More. Who wants to pay more? I don't. Guess what? Your customers don't want to pay more either. So stop using that word. In a sales presentation with a customer, I want to make that sales presentation emotional. I want to paint a picture for them. I want to use words that disturb them, that get them closer to taking action. So a word that I like to use is struggle. Hey, Mr. Customer, we have this coverage in place to make your monthly payments on your mortgage. If you get sick or hurt, that way you guys don't have to struggle to make that mortgage payment. Hey, Mr. Customer, we have a coverage here that I'm going to quote you that would pay off the loan on this car that you just got. That way your family doesn't have to struggle with that monthly payment if you're not around. How does that feel? That word struggle. I don't want to struggle. I don't want my family to struggle. It's what causes me, it disturbs me, it gets me closer to action. The words we use matter. Number 6, how we communicate the message matters. So guys, a few things that I see new, early, excited, hungry salespeople do is they're very excited. They're very, very excited. They're very enthusiastic. They have a lot of passion, and you can hear that in their voice because they're excited to go out and make some money. They're excited to help people get the product or service that they're selling. But I want you to start to think of it this way. You need to drop the enthusiasm. You need to act like you do this every single day, because that gives your customer will sense that you have authority, that you know what you're doing. So drop your enthusiasm. How fast you're talking to your customers really matters, because if you're talking really fast, then your customer can't really process what you're saying to them. Rate of speed, how fast you're talking to your customers matters. When you're using pauses, matter. Generally, what you say right before your pause is where the customer is going to put their focus, right? That's where where you're amplifying your message, is when you pause after that. So for example, in a pitch, I'm going to talk about and demonstrate how rate as well as pauses here, so you can kind of see the difference. I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to talk really, really fast. Second one, I'm going to talk slower like I normally do. So, Mr. Customer, when people have loans on their vehicles, there's really three things I think about as your agent. The first thing I think about is, heaven forbid, if anything terrible happens to your vehicle, we want to make sure that we can fix it or replace it with little to no money out of your pocket. Like, that was hard for me to even do, number one. But think about your customer. Like, I'm like having a hard time focusing if that person's saying it that quickly to me. It's hard for me to process what they're saying, right? And so the way we communicate matters. And I didn't really utilize pauses there. So now let's look at a different example when I kind of slow that down and use strategy with my speed and when I'm utilizing pauses. Okay, so Mr. Customer, when people have loans on vehicles, there's really three things I think about as your agent. First thing, we want to make sure that if anything happens to your new truck, whether it's damaged in a fender bender, or maybe you hit a deer, maybe even if it's totaled, we want to make sure that you've got the right coverage in place to either fix or replace it for you with little to no money out of your pocket. Think about how you feel. Actually understand what I was saying and what, the importance of that, how fast you're, going through your pitch, as well as when you're utilizing pauses. And I think your tone, right? Drop your enthusiasm. You got to act like you do this all the time. I feel like that communicates authority, that communicates trust. And your customer will naturally start to trust you more when you can do that. And we're talking about, how we communicate this with them. I like to try to communicate in a way like a doctor would communicate with me. Someone that has authority. How are they communicating that message to you? They definitely do not sound desperate. I know for that for a fact. And they're, very unattached emotionally to my decision, if that makes sense. And I think that's a big thing for us salespeople, is we get too darn emotional. But if they tell us no, we take it personally. When we start to take things personally more and more, that starts to come off in our conversations with our customers. Our customers can sense that we're desperate. And so, I think what's helped me is to drop the enthusiasm and, really get good at making suggestions and teaching people like a doctor would. I guess what's helped me do that is by trying to not be so emotionally attached to the customer's decision. Because then I think it really helps me just to be able to perform in that way. Now, in regards to a sales conversation, how we communicate things matters and our approach matters. In the pivot, I like to make things very logical, because if I'm pivoting, I'm bringing up something new that they're not thinking about right now. And so if I want to do that, I want to do it in a very smooth way. I want it to make sense. I don't want them to feel like it's just coming out of nowhere. So I try to keep my pivots logical. When I'm doing a sales presentation where I'm educating the customer, so now that I've pivoted, they're listening to me. Now it's time for me to actually educate them. I want them to know, here's the problem you face, here's a solution to your problem, and here are your benefits. And when I'm doing my sales presentation, going from a pivot that's very logical, I want my sales presentation to be emotional. In my sales presentation, at times I will increase the enthusiasm because I'm passionate and I know, these are things that happen to people, and I want our customers to know that. I want them to experience what I'm telling them. So I get into the details. I use those very descriptive words that at times disturb them and get them closer to action. And I utilize pauses strategically after I say something and where I want them to focus, right? I will use clarifying questions, which is, I'm jumping ahead of myself, to make sure that they're engaged with me. But in that sales presentation, guys, I want it to be emotional. And then when I go to close, right, I'm going from the presentation to the close, I want to transition from emotional to now again logical. I want the close to be logical for the customer. People buy off of emotion and they justify with logic. And so that is why I do those things. Number 7, pressure is a no-no. In sales, if you don't like to feel that sales pressure, well, guess what? Your customer doesn't either. That pressure is a no-no. I would encourage you to kind of look at your sales conversation. And I've talked about breaking that sales conversation down in a way where you can actually figure out where you need to focus, problem solve where you need to focus in regards to your training so you can actually get better. Look at your sales conversation. Are you getting pressure? Is there a lot of sales friction, like that weird friction after your pivot? Maybe there is. Is there a lot of friction and pressure that you get from your customers in your sales presentation? Or is it in your close? Or, at what areas of the pivot presentation and close are you getting that pressure? Because I think then it allows you to know, okay, that's where I can focus as far as training. At what points during your sales conversations are you getting that pressure? Number 8, clarifying questions. Touched on this when we were talking about the sales presentation. But clarifying questions, you can use them strategically, right? And I feel like they're really great if you've been talking a lot, right? You've been going through your sales presentation and you haven't heard from your customer for a minute, maybe even more than 30 seconds. Use a clarifying question. It pulls them back into the conversation, right? So a few clarifying questions that I like to use are, does that make sense? You following me? Do you have any questions? Right? Those are things that get the customer engaged. I almost like to think as if I'm holding their hand throughout the whole conversation. Those questions are like checkpoints, right? That I know that we're good to keep moving on. And, if they have an issue, they're going to tell you, right? If they don't understand, they're going to tell you. And so it gives you an opportunity to help them um, throughout the whole process. And I think these clarifying questions, they make it so that you don't ever have a hard close, right? Because these clarifying questions, you're getting your customer to say yes along this whole sales journey. That at the end of the thing, there's really no hard close. Like, you've pretty much done all of the legwork up to this point. The close should be very, very simple, right? That's what clarifying questions will do for you as well. Number 9, budget comes later, right? I mean, think about it, guys, right? If a customer calls you and they want a new quote, and if you start with price and you put the focus on price, guess what your customer is going to think about? Think about price. Guess what they're going to make their decision off of? They're going to make it off of price, right? Now, if you can, strategically wait to talk about price until after you've built value, I mean, I think your odds are better in closing that deal. It's more in your favor, right? It makes more sense. Help the customer understand. Help the customer understand why you're better, how your coverages are going to protect them better, how you're different, what different coverages and discounts they're getting. Build that value, tell them the stories, and then talk about price, right? I feel like if you're going to start with price, you're going to lose with price. Okay, so budget comes later. And number 10, people buy from those that they like, know, and trust. This is a big deal. So the questions you should be asking yourself, and I think this goes back to how can we train and train effectively and start to implement things. I think you need to ask yourself, how can I get my customers to like me better? Maybe, you're not developing a personal relationship with your customer over the phone or in person. And obviously if you can develop a relationship with them, they're going to like you more. So how can you do that? What kinds of things can you do? How can you get people to, know you better? I think, this comes with, the other piece, but trust, right? How can you get your customers to trust you better? Right? What are some different types of things that you can do to earn their trust? For me, and I've talked about this a lot, and this is strategy, psychological strategy. If I can over deliver for a customer and actually take care of them, I feel like they're going to trust me more after that, right? So as often as I can, I want to find ways that I can over deliver for my customers so I can build that trust, right? And then guess what? When I go and make a recommendation to them, they're actually going to listen to me, and they're probably going to take that, more seriously than if they didn't trust me, right? So I can develop trust. And so ask yourself, what are some things that I can do to develop trust with my customers? Because the more trust you build, the more effective you're going to be in your conversations. And guys, I think ultimately what, people buy from people they know, like, and trust, I think ultimately what that's taught me is if you just do good, it's going to come back to you, right? I'm a big believer of that. The The more that you give, the more that you get. It's such an important principle that has changed my life and is changing my life. The more you give, the more you get. And life is just so fulfilling when you can look at it with that lens. Instead of it being so cutthroat, it's now this place that's like, oh my gosh, there's an abundance of everything. And the more that I give, the more that I get. And it's the coolest thing how all this works. Guys, it truly is life changing. And so that's what I've got for you guys today. This psychological selling piece has been such an important role in my consistent success. And I think it's not something really talked about or taught within our industry. And especially as us being team members, right? 99% of the team members I ask, do you like to feel like you're a salesperson? Do you like to feel like you're steamrolling people's objections, and feel like you're pushing a product on people? 99% of the time when I ask that, team members say, Colter, no, I don't like that. I see people's heads shaking no before I'm even finishing my question. Okay. And so, guys, we don't have to feel like we're being a salesperson, right? And if 99% of you relate with that, take these different pieces of this psychological selling and implement, one of them, right? Just get implementing these things so you can get to that next level. The quicker that you can implement, the faster you're going to go, right? And my goal is I want to see you guys go faster and farther than I ever have. That'd be really cool. Appreciate you guys. We will catch you in the next episode.